Have you ever sat in your kitchen, coffee growing cold, and thought, I never imagined it would feel like this? The silence, the long stretches of hours where no one calls, no one visits. You're surrounded by familiar walls, but they feel heavier now. Empty rooms, quiet mornings, a table set for one. You're not alone in feeling this way. More and more people are finding themselves growing older without the company they once had. Maybe your children live far away. Maybe your spouse has passed. Maybe friends have faded, taken by time or distance. Maybe it just feels like the world has moved on and left you behind. But let me tell you something I've learned. Loneliness does not mean you are broken. Feeling alone is not something to be ashamed of. In fact, it might just be one of the most honest feelings you've had in a while. I remember a man named Sam. He was my neighbor for nearly 20 years. A quiet man, strong in his younger years, always the one mowing his lawn at sunrise, fixing things for neighbors, bringing his grandkids over on Saturdays. But as the years passed, the visits slowed. His wife passed first, then his son moved across the country. One day I saw him sitting on his porch, not with tools in hand, but with his head down. I sat beside him and asked, "How are you?" He didn't answer right away. Then he said quietly, "I feel invisible." Those words stayed with me. Loneliness is not just being alone. It's feeling like you no longer matter. Like you're not seen, not heard, not needed. And the first step in finding peace again, the first of the 7 things I want to share with you is this. Acknowledge your loneliness without shame. That's where healing begins. You see, so many of us were taught to keep quiet about our feelings, especially the hard ones. We were told to be strong, to not complain, to be grateful for what we have. And yes, gratitude is important. But it should never be used to silence pain. Pain needs a voice. Loneliness needs light. You cannot heal something you keep hidden in the dark. I used to tell myself that I was just tired, just getting older. But what I was really feeling was isolation. What I really needed was connection. And it wasn't until I said it out loud, even just to myself, that something shifted. So I'll ask you this. When was the last time you admitted, even quietly, that you felt lonely? It's not weakness. It's not failure, it's truth. And truth is the first door to change. After my wife passed, I went weeks without speaking more than a few words to anyone. I kept busy. I stayed productive. But in the quiet moments when the house creaked and the sun set too early, I felt a kind of emptiness I'd never known. I didn't want pity. I didn't want a dozen people fussing over me. I just wanted to feel seen again, known again like I mattered. So one morning I did something different. I sat down and I spoke out loud just to the quiet of the room. I'm lonely, I miss being needed, I miss being loved. And I don't know what to do about it. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even out loud enough for anyone to hear, but I heard it. And it felt like something heavy was finally laid down. It didn't fix everything, but it opened something in me. It softened the edge. From that day on, I started letting myself feel it instead of fighting it. And strangely enough, feeling it made it easier to live with. If you're feeling something similar right now, I want you to know you are not invisible, you are not forgotten. And there is nothing wrong with you for feeling this way. Loneliness is not the problem, hiding it is. Now, before I go on, let me gently ask you something. If you've made it this far and you feel this message might help someone else, someone who's been sitting in their own quiet house, wondering if anyone understands, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Glowing Age. We're building a space where stories like ours are not only welcome, but honored. And your support means the world. Back to what I was saying. When you name your loneliness, you take back a little power. When you stop pretending you're okay, you stop fighting yourself. And that energy can finally go somewhere else, toward healing, connection, peace. Some people worry that saying they're lonely makes them seem needy. But I believe it makes you brave. Because naming it is the first act of love you can offer yourself. I remember a woman I met at a library group. Her name was Louise. She was always dressed sharp, smiled at everyone. You'd never guess that inside she felt empty. One day she shared something simple that I never forgot. She said, "Being lonely isn't the worst part. Pretending I'm not, that's what breaks me." Since that day, I've tried to stop pretending. Now when someone asks how I'm doing, I try to be honest. Not dramatic, just honest. I've had a hard week. I've been feeling off. I could use some company. Most of the time, people don't turn away. They lean in. They say, "Me too." Because here's the truth. Loneliness is not rare, it's just rarely spoken. But when we speak it, we make space for others to do the same. And that, my friend, is where peace begins. So if your days have felt long, if your heart has felt heavy, if you've wondered if anyone really sees you anymore, this is me seeing you. You are not alone in this. You are still needed, still wanted, still worthy of being heard. And it all begins with one simple, powerful step. Acknowledge your loneliness. Say it without shame. Say it without fear. Say it like someone who finally understands that healing never comes through hiding. It comes when we dare to speak, to share, to feel. That's the first thing. And tomorrow, we begin the next. There's something sacred about the quiet moments, not the lonely ones, the chosen ones, the moments you create on purpose, not because anyone told you to, not because someone expects you to, but because your soul needs a place to land. After acknowledging our loneliness, the next step toward healing isn't big or loud. It's simple, gentle, often overlooked. Create one small daily ritual that grounds you. Let me tell you what I mean. Years ago, after my wife passed, I fell into a fog. Days ran together. Meals didn't taste right. I couldn't remember what day it was, and honestly, I didn't care. The mornings were the hardest, waking up without her, reaching for the shape that wasn't there anymore. But one morning, something small changed. I got out of bed, poured myself a cup of tea, and instead of drinking it distractedly like always, I took it outside. I sat on the back porch, still in my robe, and just listened to the wind in the trees. That was it. But I did it again the next day, and the day after. Eventually, it became my ritual, not a routine, not a chore, a ritual. A moment I claimed for myself. A small act of stillness, of intention, of quiet presence. It grounded me. It reminded me that I was still here, that I was still breathing, that I could still feel something besides loss. And over time, that simple cup of tea became a doorway back to life. You don't need anything fancy. You don't need to become someone else. You just need one thing, one small act that says, I matters. Maybe it's lighting a candle in the evening, or writing one sentence in a journal, or putting on your favorite record and sitting still for the first song. Maybe it's a morning walk, or sitting by the window with your hands wrapped around something warm, or whispering a prayer before bed. It doesn't have to be long, it just has to be yours. You see, when we're alone, our days can start to feel like they have no shape. 1 hour bleeds into the next. The weight of the quiet becomes heavy. But rituals give form to time. They give meaning to the spaces that used to feel empty. And most importantly, they give you something to look forward to, even if it's just 5 minutes. When I speak with folks in their 60s, 70s, and 80s who live alone, the thing they often miss most isn't noise or crowds. It's rhythm. It's the sense of being needed, expected, anchored. But here's what I remind them. You don't need someone else to give you rhythm. You can build it yourself. You can wake up and say, this is the time I tend to me. And in a world that forgets to check on us sometimes, that kind of attention, given to ourselves, is powerful. Let me tell you about a woman named Irene. She lived 2 streets over from me. After her husband passed, she started setting a place at the table just for herself. Not out of habit, out of honor. She said, for 40 years I set this table for others. Now I set it for me. She'd make herself breakfast, sit at the table, no distractions. She said it reminded her she still mattered, that she was worth showing up for. That's what a ritual does. It makes you visible to yourself again. If you're watching this and thinking, what's the point? Let me tell you this, the point is you. Not your productivity, not your usefulness to others. Just you are the point. And if this message is resonating with something inside you, if it's stirring a quiet yes in your heart, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to Glowing Age. Your support keeps this space going. It lets more people know that aging doesn't have to mean fading. It can mean blooming. Even now, back to rituals. Some days your ritual might feel pointless. You'll be tempted to skip it. Don't do it anyway. Especially on the hard days, because those are the days your soul needs the most care. Over time, your small ritual becomes an act of resilience, a declaration. I am still here. I am still me. I am still worthy of care. In that quiet act of love, it becomes the root from which new life can grow. So ask yourself today, what small moment can I create that is mine and mine alone? Then do it, and let it lead you home to yourself again. There's something most people forget when they talk about growing older, and that's the voice in your own head. You can live in the quietest house, in the smallest town, with no one around for miles, and still not feel truly alone. Or you can be surrounded by people and feel more isolated than ever. It all comes down to the voice inside. That running commentary, that constant conversation you have with yourself. After loneliness is acknowledged, and once you've created space in your day for a grounding ritual, the next step in healing and finding peace is this. Talk to yourself kindly, even out loud if needed. I know that might sound odd at first, maybe even a little silly, but think about it. How many times have you said things to yourself you would never say to someone you love? You're useless. You're a burden. You should have done more. No one cares. We say these things quietly, sometimes without even noticing. They slip into our thoughts when we burn the toast, forget a name, or stare too long at a phone that doesn't ring. But those words, they shape us. They wear grooves into the way we see ourselves, and after a while they start to sound like truth. That's why we must change the way we speak to ourselves, not because we're trying to ignore reality, but because we're trying to love ourselves back to life. I remember one evening, I'd had a long day, nothing special, just one of those days where the silence felt heavier than usual. I dropped a plate in the kitchen. It shattered everywhere. And before I could think, I heard the words in my own mind. Idiot, can't even hold a plate. I stopped, stared at the mess. And then I said out loud, you're not an idiot, you're tired, and it's okay. It felt strange at first, but it also felt like comfort, the kind of comfort I would have given to anyone else. The kind I used to offer my children, my wife, my friends, gentle, patient, real. We forget to give that comfort to ourselves. But you, my friend, you need it too. You need to hear words of kindness, words of comfort, words of forgiveness, not just from others, but from your own heart. So speak them, out loud if needed. When you make a mistake, say, that's okay, I'm learning. When you feel lonely, say, I see you, I love you. When you feel tired, say, you've done enough, rest now. Even if no one else hears it, you do. And that voice becomes your companion. I once read a quote, you talk to yourself more than anyone else, make sure you're saying something kind. It stuck with me, because when we live alone, whether by circumstance or by choice, the voice in our head becomes our most frequent visitor. Shouldn't it be a kind one? Now I know this won't be easy at first, especially if you've been hard on yourself for years. That habit doesn't break overnight. But every time you catch yourself speaking harshly, pause and try again. Wait, that's not true. I'm doing the best I can. I'm still learning how to be gentle with myself. Those phrases, soft as they are, begin to reshape the silence. They start to turn loneliness into something sacred, into solitude, into sanctuary. Let me tell you about my old friend Harold. Harold lived alone after his wife died. No children, no siblings, just him and a little radio that played golden oldies in the kitchen. One day I visited and I heard him talking. I thought maybe he had company, but no, it was just him. He was sitting in his chair, holding a cup of coffee, talking to himself as if he were talking to someone he loved. Good morning, Harold, he said. You did all right yesterday, let's have a good one today. When I asked him about it, he smiled and said, I figured if I'm going to be the one I talk to all day, I might as well be kind. That's wisdom. That's self-respect. That's the voice that leads us back to peace. If you've ever caught yourself being your own worst critic, if you've spent too many nights replaying mistakes and regrets, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Glowing Age. You're not the only one, and your support helps us reach others who need this reminder too. Remember, this is not about pretending everything is perfect. It's about giving yourself the same love you've given others your whole life. So speak gently, speak truthfully, speak kindly, because your words matter, even when no one else hears them, and especially when you're the only one listening. When you've been alone for a while, the world outside your door can start to feel distant. The streets seem louder, the faces seem younger, the pace seems faster, and something inside says, maybe it's just easier to stay home. I know that feeling. I lived in it for years. After my wife passed, I found myself shrinking into the corners of the house, not out of fear, just out of habit. The mail piled up. I let the weeds grow tall. Even the thought of going to the store felt like too much. You tell yourself it's just easier, quieter, safer. But what you don't realize is that little by little, the walls close in. You stop being part of the world, and the world slowly stops being part of you. That's why the next step is so important. Open your door to the world again, even a little, not because you have to, not because someone told you to, but because the world still has things waiting for you: kindness, connection, laughter, even beauty. Sometimes we think of rejoining life as a big, dramatic act, but it's not. It starts with something small. A walk to the mailbox instead of just checking it later. A hello to the neighbor instead of a quiet nod. A trip to the library to sit near other people, even if you say nothing. Life meets us in the small steps. I once knew a man named Louis. He lived a block down from me, lost his wife to cancer, his son to an accident, spent nearly a decade in his house, rarely seen. One spring, I saw him outside for the first time in years. Just sitting on his porch, I waved. He waved back. A few days later, I saw him again. This time he nodded. Eventually, we began chatting, just a few words. But then he started telling me about his garden. Said he hadn't touched it in years. The next week, I saw him with a small shovel and a pack of seeds. That summer, his garden bloomed. Sometimes healing begins with a hello. You don't have to go to events or force yourself into crowds. Just find small ways to re-enter the rhythm of the world. Because when you stop being visible, it's easy to start believing you don't exist. But you do. You still belong. Let me tell you about Gloria. She was 76 when she joined a local knitting circle. She hadn't spoken to anyone besides the mailman in weeks. But she found a flyer at the grocery store and thought, maybe I'll just watch. So she showed up, sat quietly, didn't say much the first few times, but then someone complimented her stitches. The next week, she brought cookies. Now she's the one who brings extra yarn and teaches new members. She told me, I didn't realize how much I missed the sound of my own laughter. That's what happens when you open the door, even just a crack. The world comes in, not all at once, not with a bang, but gently, slowly, like the morning light returning after a long night. If you've been closing yourself off, if the silence of your house has started to sound too loud, maybe it's time. Not to fix everything, just to take one step. Go for a walk, wave at someone, sit on your porch. Join a group even if you just watch. Be near people even if you're not ready to speak, because presence matters. And being in the world again will remind you of something that's easy to forget. You're still part of the story. If this message is nudging something inside you, if it's bringing up memories or longings you thought you packed away, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Glowing Age. This space is here to remind you that it's not too late. Not too late to rejoin life. Not too late to be seen. Not too late to feel joy. Let this be the day you open the door, just a little. Because sometimes, that's all it takes for hope to find its way back in. There's a kind of heaviness that comes when feelings have nowhere to go. You carry it around like a quiet ache. It settles in your chest, in your shoulders, in your bones, and with every day that passes, it grows heavier. That's what unspoken emotions do. They linger, they press down, they build walls around the heart. And that's why the next step in healing when you feel alone is this. Express your feelings, even if no one's there to listen. I know it sounds strange. What's the point of speaking when no one answers? What's the use in writing something no one will read? But I've lived long enough to know expression is not about getting a reply. It's about letting go. There was a time in my life when I couldn't sleep. I'd toss and turn. The nights were long, the thoughts were louder than the silence. Regrets, fears, what-ifs. One night I got up and found an old notebook in the drawer. I didn't think, I just started writing. Not poetry, not a story, just a sentence. I miss her. Then another, I'm tired of pretending I'm okay. That night I filled 4 pages. The next morning, something was different, not fixed. Not perfect, just lighter. That notebook became my place, my release. And over time, the weight I was carrying began to shift. You don't need a notebook, you don't need a fancy journal. You just need a way to let the feelings come out of you instead of trapping them inside. You can write. You can speak aloud to yourself. You can pray. You can hum, paint, walk, sing, anything that helps move what's inside to the outside. Because what we express, we process. And what we process, we can begin to heal. Let me tell you about Margaret. Margaret was in her late 70s when she joined a community art class. Not because she thought she was talented, in fact, she told me she hadn't picked up a brush in 40 years. But she said something had built up inside. Years of caregiving, years of silence, years of not being asked, how are you really? So she started painting. Her first canvas was just colors, swirls of blue, streaks of gray, no clear picture. But when I saw it, I knew that was grief, that was memory. That was a woman finding her way back to herself. She told me, "It's not about making something pretty, it's about saying something I didn't know how to say." That's the point. You don't need to explain your feelings to anyone. You don't need approval. You just need to give those feelings a place to land. Because the longer they sit in silence, the more they whisper things that aren't true. That you're alone because you're not lovable. That you're forgotten because you're no longer needed. That no one asks how you're doing because no one cares. None of that is true. But feelings kept inside can twist reality, so let them out. Talk to the mirror, write to someone you've lost. Sing to the sky. Whatever way you choose, let it be yours. If you're feeling something even now, a tug in your chest, a lump in your throat, that's your body asking you to release something. Let it out. If this video gives you permission to feel, to write, to cry, or to speak, then take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Glowing Age. You're not alone in this. And every voice that joins us helps someone else know they're not alone either. Back to expression. Sometimes people say, "I don't want to feel worse by writing it down." But here's the secret. You already feel it. Writing it doesn't make it worse. It just makes it real. And once it's real, you can begin to carry it with more kindness. Maybe even put some of it down. I keep a jar by the window. When I have a thought that won't leave me alone, a worry, a memory, a prayer, I write it on a small piece of paper, fold it, and drop it in. That jar is full now. But you know what? I feel lighter. Because it's not all living inside me anymore. So try it. Give your heart some breathing room. Let your feelings move. Don't let silence turn into suffering. Let it become space. Space for release. Space for grace. And maybe, just maybe, space for peace to return. There's a quiet joy that comes from giving. Not the kind of giving you used to do when you were raising a family or working long hours. Not the kind that left you tired and stretched thin. I'm talking about simple giving, gentle giving. The kind of giving that reminds you that you're still part of the fabric of life. When you're feeling alone, the world starts to feel like it doesn't need you anymore. And that thought, that belief, is one of the heaviest burdens to carry. But there's a way to shake that feeling loose. Give something, even something small. It doesn't have to be money. It doesn't have to be a grand gesture. It just has to come from the heart. A smile to a stranger. A kind word to the clerk at the store. A short note to someone you haven't spoken to in a while. These tiny acts do something profound. They pull you out of your own ache just for a moment. They remind you that you still have something to offer, that you still matter. There's a man named Walter who lives near me, 84 years old, lives alone, doesn't drive anymore. Every Thursday he bakes a batch of cookies, nothing fancy, just simple oatmeal ones, the way his wife used to make. Then he walks next door and gives them to the family with 3 little kids. "I don't have much to give," he says, "but they smile every time. That's worth it." And every time I see him coming back from that walk, he's standing just a little taller, because he remembers he's still part of someone else's joy. And so are you. You might think, "But I don't have anyone to give to." But you do. You have neighbors. You have clerks at the store. You have postal workers, delivery drivers, folks at the library, the front desk at your clinic. You have the world. And the world needs more of what you carry. A story, a recipe, a kindness, a presence. Let me tell you about Denise. Denise is 79. Lives alone since her sister passed. She started making bookmarks out of old greeting cards. Nothing complicated, just folded and cut pieces with a small message handwritten on the back. "You are not alone." She leaves them at the local coffee shop. Now people leave notes back for her. "Thank you, I needed this today. I keep this in my Bible. My daughter found one and cried." All from one small gesture. Giving is not about saving the world. It's about reminding yourself that you're still connected to it. And when you give, not to be praised, not to be needed, but just to show up for someone, something inside you heals. You stop feeling invisible. You start feeling alive again. So think small. Write a card, send a photo. Drop off muffins to the front desk at your doctor's office. Call someone you haven't spoken to in months and just say, "I was thinking of you." That's it. And if this message is reminding you that you still have something beautiful to give, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Glowing Age. This community grows because of generous souls like you, and because of the quiet ways we keep showing up for one another. Back to giving, sometimes when you give, it doesn't bounce back right away. You might not hear thank you. You might not see the difference. But that doesn't mean it didn't matter. Sometimes a kind act lands like a seed. It rests in the soil of someone else's pain. And maybe one day, without you ever knowing, it blooms into something good. That's the kind of giving that matters most. The kind that heals both the giver and the receiver. You don't have to be young, busy, or surrounded by people to still make a difference. You just have to care. And if you're still watching this, I know you do. So go give something small, even today. It might just remind you who you are. A soul still capable of joy. A hand still able to lift others. A heart still beating with love to share. And that, even in the quiet, is enough. There's something we all carry into old age, and it's not our aches or wrinkles or quiet routines. It's our expectations. The pictures we painted in our heads about what this chapter would look like. We thought we'd be surrounded by family. We imagined holidays full of laughter. We assumed we'd grow old beside someone we love, rocking on a porch holding hands. But sometimes life doesn't go that way. Sometimes people move on, or pass on, and we're left with a reality that looks nothing like what we imagined. And that's why the final step on this journey, the last thing I want to share with you, may be the hardest, but also the most freeing. Let go of what you thought growing old would look like. Because when you release the picture, you create space for something new, something real, something honest. I remember the first Christmas I spent alone. The kids had their own plans. The phone didn't ring. I made myself dinner, sat at the table, candle flickering, and I cried, not because I was weak, but because I had to say goodbye to the image I had carried all those years of a big family gathered around, of traditions that would never change. It hurt, but here's what happened after the tears. I got up. I turned on music. I watched an old holiday movie. I wrote a letter to my wife, even though she was gone, and somehow that night became sacred. Not because it looked like I planned, but because I stopped resisting what it was. That's the power of letting go. We don't let go because we failed. We let go because clinging to something that no longer exists robs us of the beauty that still does. Letting go means releasing the should-haves, could-haves, and used-to-bes. It means looking at your life exactly as it is and choosing to find grace in it. Let me tell you about Robert. Robert was 81 when he sold the house he'd raised his family in. Too many stairs, too many memories. He moved into a small apartment near the park. He told me, at first it felt like losing everything. But then I realized what I lost was just the idea. What I gained was peace. Now he walks in that park every morning, talks to the ducks, feeds the squirrels. He says hello to the same joggers every day. And you know what? He's content. Because he's living in the life he has, not the one he thought he'd have. If you're holding tight to an old picture of how your family used to be, of how you hoped retirement would look, of how you thought love would last, maybe it's time to loosen your grip. Not to forget, not to erase, but to free yourself so you can see what's still here. The sunrise outside your window, the comfort of your favorite chair, the way your hands still know how to cook your favorite dish. The peace in a quiet room that's all yours. There is beauty in the life that is, not just the life that was. If this message is speaking to your heart, if you feel the pull to release the picture you've been holding, please like this video and subscribe to Glowing Age. We're not here to sell you a fantasy. We're here to honor the truth. And that's what makes this community matter. Letting go is not giving up, it's choosing presence. And presence is where peace lives. You are not behind, you are not broken. You are not forgotten, you are simply living a life that's different from what you expected. And in that difference, there is room for growth, for gratitude, for joy. So let go of the picture and look at what's in front of you. Because even now, especially now, life still wants to love you back. And you are still so very worthy of that love.